your workplace is wherever your time zone is, and respecting those time zones, right? So you're scheduling your appointments, you're scheduling when you're going to communicate with Europe, Asia, North America, South America, wherever they happen to be, right?
Hello, my friend. Welcome to Bold Conscious Connections. My name is Raju Panjwani, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. So this channel is dedicated to exploring the journeys of visionary leaders, entrepreneurs, who really dared to follow their dreams, their passions, and create really impactful businesses. So if you're looking to become an entrepreneur or otherwise seeking inspiration to elevate your career, well, you're in the right place, my friend. Let me say, why do I do this? It's because, like you, I had a career over 25 years, and at some point, my desire to follow my own path just took over, and I quit my job about 20 years ago now. So on this channel, what I do is we delve into strategies, mindsets, stories behind the success of those that have done this before, like I have. So what I want you to do is hit the subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and join us on this exciting journey towards living boldly and consciously. So now let me just dive into this episode with you.
Once again, I'm really, really excited to have my friend Henrik De Gyor on this podcast. And we're going to talk about something very topical. But, I always ask this question, Henrik, tell the audience who you are. And of course, we'll talk about what you do.
Sure. Yep. So my name is Henrik De Gyor. I'm a consultant by trade. I'm also a podcaster, author, and speaker.
And then who is Henrik? That's what he does.
Yes, it is what I do.
It is what you do. Okay. Henrik, you've always labeled yourself, and I've seen for a while, as a remote entrepreneur. Was that always the case, or is it because of COVID or the environment that changed?
No, COVID happened after I was a remote entrepreneur, honestly. So I started a number of years ago. I was really remote starting in the year 2000. So well before all that started. And as soon as I got a laptop and I needed to do a lot of field work, realistically speaking, so I was remotely doing journalism actually at the time. I had to be on site wherever the work was happening, not in an office. However, the concern was the office wasn't ready for remote work. So I had to come back into the office to file a lot of things unless they were willing to accept my email for the content that I was ready to submit. Because that was the beginning of when you could not only publish on paper, whether I was working for a newspaper or a magazine, but also online. And so the beginning of online publishing changed that a lot. And they adapted very slowly, to be perfectly honest.
So I will put the show notes that you've been in the digital assets space, helping people try to make things organized, more efficient, and for companies, etc. How has this shift to remote or hybrid, whatever people call it these days, impacted your entrepreneurial journey? And are there any companies that you've discovered in this transition for yourself?
Well, COVID really helped with that, honestly, because we could do that for a couple decades, honestly. However, it accelerated it for obvious reasons because we didn't have a choice. Before we had a choice and people were resisting. Now they're back to resistance because of RTO, return to office. And they think that, now COVID's over, so you should just go back to the office and do it all the same because, yes, you may have been efficient doing it at home, but we don't really want you to be at home. And we'll talk about why they want to retain their office spaces.
Right. When you write a lot about this, so many would argue with you, though, Henrik, as a counterpoint that remote work actually hampers productivity and collaboration. Do you have evidence or experience that support that perspective?
Absolutely. Yes. So it does not hamper productivity or collaboration at all. What it does hamper, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So when you push these mandates of returning to the office, and let's be very specific, this is office work only. This is not working at a warehouse or a brick and mortar where you have physical deliveries or factories or physical product development. We're talking strictly office work, right? Meaning knowledge
services.
Yes. Yeah. That's all 100% digital, right? 100% digital. And it could be done in person, like what we're doing, or it could be done one-on-one, like we're doing right now, or in group environments, or whatever that looks like, or
Sure.
the whole company at the same time.
Mhm.
Anyhow, what it does hamper is the justification for commercial real estate spend. Meaning, do you really need that building when it's only 40% full on a good day?
Right.
Right? Okay. So it's also hampering commuting times, which not all of us miss, to be perfectly honest, depending on how long your commuting time is to the office and back every day that you go to the office. It hampers travel expense accounts because
Sure.
why are you traveling when you can do this online, right? Can we do this anymore? Or let's have a hug. Oh, wait, HR doesn't like that anymore. So why are we meeting in person? So we can look them in the eye and go, oh, I trust you now, as if that works. So, and then it does hamper egos, because then you can't show off your shiny new car or show off whatever you're wearing. Well, you can, if you really care. And then it hampers brown nosing. And what it really hampers is office politics and office drama. So if you really focus on that, you're probably at the office for all the wrong reasons. And you shouldn't be in business for those reasons.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for an office, literally. So we can talk about all the reasons why it is more productive in working remotely. And full disclosure, I don't work hybrid. All my contracts are 100% remote, or I don't do work with them. It's that simple. And a lot of people where they tell them, oh, you have to return to the office or otherwise you'll be fired or docked pay or blah, blah, blah. They just leave. And that's usually their best talent. So if you're okay with that, go ahead and push those mandates, but you're going to suffer.
So you're really describing that you're against mandates. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm against offices for work that you can do wherever you need to, because the office culture might have not evolved and the leadership or management may have not evolved in the last 5 years for whatever reason, because they refuse to adapt, right? So that's an adaptivity thing for businesses, right? But it's not inflicting pain on all the workers. That shouldn't be the challenge, right? Fair?
Well, you're causing controversy here for sure.
Oh, of course I am. Yeah, because it's true.
Talking about this.
I'm saying it because it's true. Yeah, keep going.
And surely, though, companies with mega number of employees, right? Maintaining a strong company culture, for instance, right? There are multiple leaders, senior people out there who are really facing a challenge because they manage teams, and these teams are remote, and clearly it causes this friction because their bosses and their bosses are saying, we got to get if you're in the service business, you got to focus on this client and how are we delivering our service. So it's often seen as a challenge for most of these senior people who've been around a while, and COVID came as a bit of a hurdle, but then they decide to adapt to some of it, but to keep it as 100% remote is where they feel like, I don't even know what these guys do. I mean, there are delivery things. There are, things you can say, these are your tasks, and I don't care when you do it. You could do it at 2:00 in the morning. I don't care.
True.
But it's a real challenge for them to really, because there's all sorts of HR policies, as you said, but there's also processes and people and, systems and technology that we could use, but it creates a challenge for sure.
Yeah. And it's refusing to adapt. That's what it's coming down to.
You think that's what it is?
Yes. Yeah, it definitely is, because all the tools are there and all the potential policy changes necessary are there, whether it's accounting challenges, we need a global workforce, or we might want a global workforce instead of just a local talent pool or a national talent pool, and we still can't find who we need. I mean, the culture doesn't have to necessarily change as long as you're willing to meet. Whether you're doing a one-on-one or an all hands for the entire company, you can do it this way, literally. And it's easier to schedule because you don't have to have an enormous group, an enormous room ever again, an enormous spend for a hotel, a stadium, literally, right? For X thousands of employees. You don't need to bus people around and waste hours of time planning for this when it could be like, oh, this is what my speech is going to be. Have a nice day.
Well, okay. Well, you certainly stirred the pot. So those in the corporate environment, what adjustments do you think as a leader that if I have, theoretically a unit of 3,000 employees that I'm managing, what adjustments do I need to make and what skills do I have to then become equipped with to be able to manage that?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it starts with communication, right? That's what ultimately it is, right?
Sure.
It's understanding that your workplace is wherever your time zone is and respecting those time zones, right?
Mhm.
So you're
Yeah.
scheduling your appointments, you're scheduling when you're going to communicate with Europe,
Mhm.
Asia, North America, South America,
Sure.
wherever they happen to be, right? And you're not going to call, Europe at 5 o'clock Eastern, right? Usually, unless it's a dire emergency, right? Those are simple things, right? Respecting each other's time barriers,
Mhm.
right? Then communicating properly using the proper tools of whatever the business is agreeing to use, right? Whether it's Microsoft tools, Google tools, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as everyone's using the standardized tools of the choice, right? And there's not that many, luckily. There's plenty to choose from, but there's usually fairly standardized business standards and all agreeing on that. And then it's a matter of sharing and knowing how to use those tools instead of playing helpless, right? Because a lot of executives play helpless and go, I don't know how to work this thing. Help me. Well, how about you ask, you try, and you learn, right? That's the hard lesson that people need to ask. I know it's hard and our egos get bruised because I don't know. So I'm going to ask and I'm going to try it out and I'm going to learn. First you do it for me, then I'm going to watch you, then I'm going to try it myself, and then I'm going to try harder and then learn, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone else does on the planet. And then you're able to share, hear, and listen and display whatever you need to, because we all know that Zoom and Google and whatever tool Teams, whatever tool you want to use, you can share anything you want on there, right? You can share your slide deck, your spreadsheet, whatever you want to share, video, images, whatever. And then, but you can also whiteboard virtually,
Yep.
right? So you don't need
Yep.
to be in a room and drawing on paper, which is
Well,
going to
these
get
things have developed during COVID because that was the
right.
need of the hour. Yeah.
Yeah. And all
So
those
use
tools
them.
have them,
Mhm.
every single one, but you have to learn how to use them, right?
That's
If you
right.
don't use them, then, but I have to draw on a whiteboard or in the room.
Yeah.
It's like, no, not really. You don't need to. You don't need a room. You don't need to wait for the room to be cleared from the last meeting either.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens in
Tea and
meetings.
coffee, and
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
Asia, tea, coffee,
Oh, anyway,
breakfast,
we have to
whatever.
clean the room because people left all their stuff in the room.
That's right.
It's like, well,
You got the next
here you
meeting
have
coming.
unlimited number of rooms. Whether you have one-on-one 15 minutes there, and then there's no walking from room to room, right?
Yeah.
You can walk
Yeah.
and have a bathroom break if you want, but that's a different issue, right? And then
So you
it's
said
a
three
matter.
things. It's communication, the tools, and then learning skills to use the tools. That's
Yes,
three. What are
exactly.
the next one? Yeah.
Yeah, it is scheduling, right? Scheduling everything that's necessary, and scheduling, make sure that everyone knows, are you available at this hour, right?
Yes.
So you
Of
don't
course.
have to ask, Raju, when are you available? I should be
Yes.
able to look at your company email calendar and
Yes.
see,
Yeah.
Raju free at 1 and 5 and 6 today, or whatever hours, right?
Yeah.
And say, okay, he's available then, and these are his working hours, right? He's available between this and that hour, and that's for any employee, right? Or any person that you're going to work with. And go, and then there's no back and forth. It's like, are you available Tuesday? No, I'm available Wednesday. What time are you available on Wednesday? 1 o'clock.
Sure.
We've all played this game, right? That's why I use Calendly, right? So you can, if my calendar is not publicly available, you know exactly which slots I'm available for the next 60 days, right? It's whoever's available books it, right? And you can use another tool. You can use Schedule All, or there's plenty of others. Google has their own, Microsoft has their own, right? But it's really about scheduling within the time frames for all activities. And that includes personal activities. If I have to have a doctor's appointment, I book it. When I'm very, very busy, I schedule sleep and meals. I already schedule time with friends, family calls, everything, right? Dinner with my wife, it's scheduled.
Yes.
Literally. Because otherwise it doesn't happen.
You don't schedule it, it doesn't have that much.
If it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. It's that simple.
Absolutely. That's true. Absolutely true.
Right? So, otherwise, your time gets wasted. That's literally what happens.
So those are the style things that people of today need to, leaders in the teams have to look at, particularly if they're working in corporate environments. So you work with a lot of company environments as well, and then you help them, equip them with whatever they think they need. So are there particular practices or activities that you incorporate that you've seen as proven successful for you and for them?
Yep. So there's a different. So again, it's a variety of different things. So you have to make sure that your equipment works properly, that you have the equipment necessary, whether it's headphones, if you're going to be in a noisy environment, or picking a quiet environment, which is really helpful too, like a closed office environment, if you have one available to you, or finding one, even if you have to repurpose a large closet, which I've seen people do. So all these things are necessary, having the tools and the environment necessary to having those conversations, right? Where even if it's in a car, right? Or walk in the park, or literally a walk, like you can have a meeting anywhere, literally anywhere, as long as you can do what you need to do, right? There's no limitation to where you're allowed to work. You must work in a confined space here. No, those days are over. So there is no butts and seats mandate. That doesn't work. That's useless by today's standard.
Because from the employee perspective, it's a little different than, for those that are managing the employees. So from the employee's perspective, it seems to me that, you're talking or making the case for, say, you can be productive anywhere.
Correct. As long as you deliver what your deliverables are and attend meetings that you're supposed to, right? So if I schedule something and you accept the meeting, right? It's like, oh, I need you on this meeting and this project. No. And we're going to discuss this and that and the other thing. I'm going to give you an agenda ahead of time, or you're going to set an agenda ahead of time saying we're going to discuss this and that. No problem. That shouldn't be that hard, right? Instead of on the whim, we're going to have a meeting now and it's going to be endless hours. So okay, so what are the deliverables? How are we going to follow up on that? How am I going to be accountable? How are you going to be accountable? Right? So it is really down to trust, right? Because why are you working with somebody you don't trust? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it's accountability. And then it comes down to follow-ups, right? What are you going to follow up on based on that accountability? Because if you don't have follow-ups, why are you expecting anything to be done? If you don't have a clear budget, why are you expecting to be within budget? If you don't have a schedule, why are you expecting it to be within a given time frame? If you don't have clear requirements, why are you expecting it to look the way you imagine it to look? Right? All these things are very simple project management things. Like, do you have project managers working with you or program managers? Those answers are fairly obvious, right?
Certainly, there's something to be said, as you were on the shake hand and the hug, to walk over to one of my key managers' desk and put a hand on his hand. He said, "Great job." This is
appreciation. Yes.
How do you? Yeah.
Okay, so realistically speaking, you probably have or should have weekly status meetings, right? Where you can share that appreciation, saying, "Oh, you know what? So and so won a huge account," or "You know what? We had a huge loss. Let's understand why that happened." Right. So both the wins and the losses. And then, of course, promotions, celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries. Oh, so-and-so has worked here 10 years, et cetera, whatever, 20 years, 30 years, whatever the magic number is. And then also what I've found also is if you track things online, like the use of systems, like say a CRM with salespeople, which, salespeople love CRMs, right? Right. So like filling them out. So how about you reward them for the most number of CRM entries, new entries per month, and maybe tie financial or an annual performance review to that, right? Or same thing or if you have product people, most number of updates to the product information system or PIM, or if they're creatives, or the most number of DAM entries, uploads or downloads to said projects. So you're rewarding on a monthly basis things that they're commonly should be doing, right? But you really don't necessarily recognize them most of the time. And then you reward them monthly for that. And you celebrate it. And you literally give them a little sheet saying, celebration, congratulations, Raju, you won the of the month. And you can't win it every single month of the year, realistically speaking, but most. And then people literally, I've done this in other companies, and people literally added it to their signature line for their emails. Because most people don't get recognized at companies. You probably realize this if you've ever worked for a company.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
So surely there are exceptions to this. I know you talked about brick and mortar businesses and where you food, you got to deliver food or what have you, because they came up
during the mall. Yeah,
that's right. So these things are not necessarily applicable as much as I guess that's required to be physically delivered and so on. But is there a significant challenge that you might have faced in the remote or hybrid work environment in overcoming for a client, or do you think that there are such experiences you can share that are common or unique to specific sort of areas?
So it's not necessarily unique to an industry or a specific company, but I would say that the most common one is the standardization of tools. So when you pick the tool, I've seen it many times where the tools differ per department. They're using a different tool to do the exact same thing in Department A and then Department B and Department C. And they've picked their own tool in Department A, B, and C, 3 different ones, instead of having a globally or nationally standardized tool, right? And that is probably a big time savings, cost savings, and standardization of not doing work 3 different times. Like, oh, we need pictures of our executives. Like, okay, well, where are they saved? Right? Are they in the X drive or B drive or SharePoint, whatever, Office 360, fill in the blank space, drive, or whatever? Or are they somewhere else? Or are they buried somewhere because of permissions, right? So there's a lot of permissioning and things like that where there's a lot of restrictions per se. Some of them is done for legitimate cybersecurity reasons. That's understandable. And a lot of it is done because they don't realize this, each department needs probably the same things, right? And
so that requires a full study to be done, like a comprehensive way to say, okay, what are all the moving parts or missing gaps?
Yes. Yeah. And so I've done that for several companies, several organizations as well, for profit and nonprofit, where it's necessary to understand is like, okay, well, if half of your departments need this, why are you all using different systems? And then how are you going to consolidate all those systems into the most used one, let's just say, or a better one, if there is a better one, let's pretend. And I don't prefer systems. I'm vendor agnostic, full disclosure. So if there's 550 systems available in blah, blah space, I don't really care which one you pick. And it shouldn't be just based on cost, but it should be based on the flexibility of what you need it to do. Right. So there's usually not a realization because departments only talk to each other when they need something from each other.
So I have a rapid fire coming up. Just for those listening still and watching, stand by for that. That'll be a little snappy. Two other questions. So what should entrepreneurs be doing now to prepare for the shift? I mean, companies, they have their own thing, but looking to the future, we talked about future of work. Is it going to be a hybrid model? Is it going to be a remote model only? Or is it going to be, we want to come into work? What do you think that we should be preparing for?
I think it's going to be more remote, in my opinion, especially after commercial real estate space implodes, kind of like 2008, maybe worse, which a lot of people are planning for, even if they own a pile of commercial real estate. So that's coming, in many people's opinion, very soon. And it's going to change a few things. There will be some hybrid, is my assumption, because some people really, really want to meet for XYZ reasons. And, some cultures, fundraising is typically done in person for a variety of reasons that, well, we already know. And
a lot of funds have been raised on the market capital, free market capital side. Remotely, so many billions have been raised this past 2 years.
Of course,
without anybody meeting anybody.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, I believe in your thing. Well, I'm going to throw some money at it and hope for the best, and have monthly or quarterly check-ins. How's my money doing?
Diligence online anyway. It's no big deal. So they've gone through everything, and then they go, okay, well, and they talk to people, their managements, etc. And people made investments on that. Never met the other person.
Right. Why do you need to meet the person if you believe in what they're doing and they have a good track record in it?
And you're talking to them on Zoom or some, video tool. Yes. Okay. So lastly, advice for entrepreneurs in terms of aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start. They've decided to quit their jobs and they're going to, this is a little bit off the topic in terms of corporate environments, but what should they be preparing for? What, should they still be skeptical about the bets of this or see this as an opportunity? This is
it's an opportunity of not wasting resources. So if you're bootstrapping a new company, let's just say a startup or a new company X, right? So you may be ramping up on talent, whether it's contractors or other people that work for you or with you for that matter.
That's right.
You don't need an office. You do not need an office. You will likely be using people globally. You will likely be working with people globally. Why are you meeting in an office when most of them are not going to be there ever, potentially speaking, right? So there are many, many examples. Automatic is one of them, like Matt Mullenweg is a perfect example. They meet maybe once or twice a year, right? Total, ever. And they have maybe one office that they on occasion meet for fundraising or investor meetings and things like that.
Which they could
And
rent for a short time or whatever.
correct. They could have a
Yeah.
shared space, literally a shared office space, right? That they use, 1 hour a month, right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole lot less than leasing a building for a year, right? Or 5 years, right? So there's perfect examples of distributed work, right?
Sure.
Where people work wherever they want to work, wherever they want to live. And this is not that hard if you think about it for tax purposes either. If they're a little creative and they think well beyond just one state, one county, one country, right?
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of different ways to do it, whether they're contractors or employees, right? Globally speaking. So it's a matter of understanding who do you need to work with, give them the tools that are not server-based, but they're cloud-based tools, right? So you don't need to own the tools per se, unless you're building the tool yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
And you build it and you use it as necessary, kind of like Microsoft, kind of like Adobe. You don't need to own the tool, right? You might own the laptop at most, or it's issued to you, whatever. Sure. And you do what you need to do from wherever you want to work, wherever you have internet access. And that's it. And then everything else can be done online, wherever you're working, whether it's from the beach, the mountain, the park, the car, home, vacation, wherever.
I think the naysayers would say, wait a minute, you work from anywhere, even if it's renting an office space for a short time and go get on a call. You're using systems that are not mine, my company's.
Correct.
You need, VPNs, et cetera. So there's all the cybersecurity concerns. And they say that's why we need to meet. That's why we need to meet in person.
No. I mean, if most secure environments, and let's talk government, military, can do this remotely, we can too. And like pharma, interestingly enough, is more secure than most military, right? Interestingly enough.
Right.
Yeah. So because they spend more. So they have those spend, right? So they figured it out. They know how to do it, right? Now, pharma, of course, is partially physical, right? But the infrastructure doesn't have to be, right? Aside from the making of. Military, of course, has to be distributed by definition, right? That's why you have a military, right? And the internet was based originally for the military in case a base was destroyed. That's the entire original reason why DARPA made it. So why aren't we using, by today's standard, X decades later, the same way?
Okay, so then on that, finally, what is, there is a need for human connection. Everybody would tell you that, right? There's a need for human connection.
Sure.
How do I get the human connection with people that I work with?
What do you mean by human connection? Having a conversation with said loved ones or people you work with?
No, the loved ones are your loved ones. But I'm saying, in the traditional environment of corporate culture, as I said, you go tap somebody on the shoulder, and you have a conversation, and there's remember coffee clatching used to be,
and you can do that today,
and you talk about baseball and other sports and the Monday morning stuff that happens.
You can still do that today with one-on-ones. So, we share a hobby, we share interests in, tea drinking or whatever. It's like, what are you drinking today? I'm drinking this. What are you drinking today? It's like, oh, great. Let's have a coffee meetup or a tea meetup or a virtual lunch, right? And you can be in a completely different time zone, right? And have a conversation about not work, during lunch, dinner, whatever, breakfast, and not waste company hours, when, I have another meeting but I have 15 minutes to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about, right?
Sure.
And you can have one-on-ones. There's nothing wrong with having one-on-ones, not just with your peers, but other people that have shared interests, whether it's mentorship or growth or understanding like what you want to understand. It's like, how did you get that promotion or whatever? Or how did you do this when you were running this part of the company while we transition? No. Whatever those asks are. Or, how is your fitness plan working out? Because I'm trying to build one myself or whatever it is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
All those are commonly done today virtually. And you don't have to do this. And you don't have to hug and worry HR.
We all do our monthly, weekly family things, for our families that live everywhere, just because we couldn't meet them and all of that,
exactly.
Weekly dinners, wine parties, or
virtual wine parties. Yeah, you can still drink wine, and so can the person on the other side of the world, right? There's nothing stopping you.
Have conversations. Yes.
Yes.
So, I do see on the corporate culture side, particularly the slightly bigger companies, the slightly senior, older people do have an aversion, or rather
Hmm.
discomfort with this whole
Yes.
scene, right?
Yeah.
They still use secretaries to schedule
Yes.
meetings. They still
Yeah.
use assistants to say, when are you available? And so even if I set my calendar, it has no meaning because they just don't care about your availability, because they just look at theirs and they don't say, okay, so okay. So the traditional way of doing things.
Hmm.
You have something to say about that?
So
Like,
in the past few contracts that I started, when they don't schedule something, it doesn't happen. My phone is usually off during the week,
sure.
during business hours,
So is
because
mine. Yeah.
no one needs to call me unless it's scheduled. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as an emergency in the real world. It's scheduled, even if it's an emergency, even if it's scheduled 15 minutes in advance, and it happens that way. Otherwise, it
Sure.
doesn't happen. It's literally that simple. So even if the building's on fire, well, don't have a building, and B, schedule it so we can figure out what we're going to do, right? If
Yeah.
we need to do something about it. It's like, oh, well, I guess we'll work remotely now.
I know it's a circular thing. All right, so we'll come to rapid fire. I didn't send you these questions in advance because we just on these topics, but they're all around this subject. So ready?
Mm-hmm.
One word to describe remote work.
Consistent.
Cool. Most unconventional remote work tool.
Whiteboard.
Best way to kickstart a remote team meeting.
How are you?
The human connection. This is a big question. Biggest misconception about remote work.
That it doesn't work.
Your favorite remote team bonding activity.
How's it going?
Oh, okay. Is there a game around that you can create? I guess you can.
You could, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or you can be very direct like me.
Well, you certainly are. Most important skill for remote leadership.
Keeping the users in mind.
You mean the clients?
And audience.
Or
the audience. Yeah.
Okay. Pajamas or professional attire at home?
Professional.
Top tip for avoiding distractions.
Top tips for
avoiding distractions while you're remotely working.
Closed office space. Quiet environment.
Office space within your environment, wherever you are, at home.
Yeah, or headphones.
That's what you mean.
If it's loud.
What is an unexpected perk working remotely?
You get more things done.
Wow, that's controversial. Okay. And lastly, best book for remote work inspiration.
There's a few. I would just do remote work on Amazon, and there's a number of them. Just look at the top-rated ones.
Anyone you recommend?
There's a number of them, and I don't remember the authors' names right now.
Okay, great. Well, as always, it's always we could talk forever. I know that, as we do, in person. Thank you for being here, and surely this is a subject that interests everyone out there, particularly larger companies who have this challenge. So before I let you go, I know that you and I had a session about AI and generative AI more than a year and a half almost now. I should have asked you that question in our conversation, but how do you see the interplay of AI and all the remote work that we just talked about?
It'll continue to be used. So one of the things that AI can do for you today, it can record and transcribe any conversation you have, if everyone's willing, of course. Or I mean, honestly, everything is recorded in work. You should assume it is. And then it can outline it and transcribe it in an automated fashion. So that's a huge bonus for note-taking, which means you don't need to, and capture all your action items and deliverables and follow-ups.
So that's integrating AI in your productivity and work because you work remotely.
Mhm.
But you can see this interplay growing and integrating, and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
providing
it will
more
only.
opportunities.
Yeah, most companies are looking at how AI can be leveraged for their benefits. A lot of people are on the fence, interestingly enough, for a variety of reasons, including security.
Mhm.
Realistically
Sure.
speaking, some of it it should be based on security, but a
Yes.
lot of it is where's the value, right? The return on investment on whatever tools they happen to be using, and
Okay.
a lot of people are not fully understanding where the value lies for whatever team is using
Okay.
XYZ
Great.
AI tool. Yeah.
So in closing, if people want to reach you, companies want to reach you,
Mhm.
where do they find you? I'll put it in the
They
show
can-
notes, but just go
Sure.
ahead if you want to
Yeah.
tell them.
I mean, they can email me, or they can find me on henrikdegyor.com. That's HenrikDegyor.com. You can book time with me right there. You can also find out what I'm doing and what I have done in the past, including speaking, podcasting, books, and I have a blog there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and
Thank you. Thank you
namaste
for having me.
instead of thank you.
Thank you for having me there.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Raju.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend, for tuning in to another episode of Bold Conscious Connections. If you really enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up, please, and subscribe for more inspiring stories and insights from top entrepreneurs and leaders. So that button is right below here. And also hit the notification bell, the thing next to subscribe, so you'll never miss another episode and any of our latest content that I post, usually every week. I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions, so drop them in the comments below. I would really love to hear more about what I'm doing and maybe bring you something that's more suitable for what you like and other things that you might want to learn about. So join our vibrant community of individuals who are out there making a difference. Okay? Stay tuned for more amazing conversation that will inspire and empower you. And until next time, remember, live boldly and consciously, my friend.